The blistering sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty plains where a fierce battle raged. A tense silence punctuated only by distant gunfire, and the faint crack of explosions filled the air. The enemy fighters, emboldened by what they thought was a crucial victory, shouted loudly with triumphant glee. "She's dead. The SEAL sniper is dead." Their voices rang out, carrying over the cacophony of war like a twisted anthem of false victory. Deep in the rugged terrain, just beyond the reach of their celebration, a figure remained still and silent. Hidden behind the gnarled branches of a thorny bush, the female SEAL sniper lay motionless, her breath slow and measured. To the enemy, she was a ghost, a shadow swallowed by the earth itself. They believed they had eliminated her, turned the tide in their favor by silencing the lethal weapon they feared most. But the truth was far from their cheer. Her dark eyes, sharp and unblinking, scanned the battlefield with deadly intent. The sniper's name was classified, known only to her closest allies, but her reputation preceded her. A woman in a role few believed she could survive, let alone dominate. The enemy's misguided joy was born from a single moment. An explosion had rocked her position, sending dust and debris into the air, followed by a volley of gunfire aimed blindly into the smoke. She had fallen beneath the rubble, or so they thought. Unseen, unheard, she remained alive and calculating. Every second she waited brought her closer to a counterstrike that would change everything. Her mind ran through her training like clockwork. Steady breathing, muscle control, zero unnecessary movement. Her fingers brushed the cold metal of her sniper rifle, a weapon that had become an extension of her own will. The enemy's cheers loud, brash, confident were the perfect camouflage for the silent storm gathering behind their lines. The battlefield was chaotic. Dust clouds swirled with gunpowder smoke. Soldiers darted between cover, and explosions shattered the earth. But amidst the chaos, she was calm. The sniper was patient, waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect target. The enemy forces, intoxicated by their perceived success, made a critical mistake: complacency. They believed the biggest threat had been neutralized. But the sniper's resolve only deepened. She understood the power of patience. A single bullet, perfectly placed, could unravel the enemy's entire strategy. Her role was unlike any other. Where most soldiers fought in squads or waves, she was alone, an unseen force, the silent protector of her team. Every shot she took was calculated, not just to kill, but to protect, to shape the battlefield from a distance. She was the eyes and ears of her squad, their guardian angel cloaked in shadows. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the rugged landscape. The enemy's voices grew louder, more reckless. They taunted her, mocking her survival with words that betrayed their ignorance. "Where is she now?" One shouted. "Dead, like we said." But in her mind, she catalogued their positions, memorized the pattern of their movements, and planned her devastating response. She had trained for moments like this, where the margin between life and death was razor thin. Time became her ally. The sniper's heartbeat slowed to a rhythmic pulse, every beat a countdown. She adjusted her scope, aligning the crosshairs on her first target, the enemy officer who had shouted commands moments before, his arrogance now his weakness. Her finger tightened on the trigger. The shot was silent, invisible, and immediate. The officer dropped without a sound, confusion rippling through the enemy ranks. The cheers faltered, replaced by the cold bite of fear. One by one, as the enemy scrambled to understand the invisible threat that had survived, the sniper's shots began to find their marks. Each bullet was a message. She was alive, she was deadly, and the battle was far from over. Her team, though unaware of the exact moment, felt the shift. The tide was turning, and it was all because of her hidden, underestimated, and fiercely determined. Her story was not just one of survival, but of relentless courage, a testament to the power of resilience and precision. The enemy may have cheered her death, but the battlefield would remember her life marked by every shot fired and every life saved. From the outside, the world of Navy SEALs was shrouded in mystery and legend, an elite brotherhood known for pushing human limits in the harshest environments. For decades, it had been a realm dominated almost entirely by men, steeped in tradition and skepticism about anyone who didn't fit the mold. But she had never been one to fit molds. Her journey to becoming a SEAL sniper was anything but conventional. Growing up in a small town, she was a girl who dreamed big in a world that often told her to aim low. Sports, leadership roles, and a fierce determination marked her childhood, but it was the military that ignited her spirit. Inspired by stories of valor and sacrifice, she set her sights on the most grueling path imaginable, becoming a Navy SEAL. Her decision shocked many. Friends, family, and even recruiters questioned if she had what it took. The SEAL pipeline was notoriously brutal, known to break even the strongest candidates. Every phase, from grueling physical tests to relentless mental challenges, demanded perfection. For a woman in a male-dominated environment, the scrutiny was even harsher. During her early training, she faced countless obstacles. Physical demands pushed her body to the brink, running miles with heavy packs, mastering underwater endurance tests, and enduring freezing cold swims that left her numb. But the mental trials were perhaps even more taxing. Skepticism from peers, whispers of doubt, and the constant pressure to prove she belonged. Yet, instead of shrinking under the weight of expectations, she grew stronger. Where others saw limitations, she saw challenges to conquer. Her instructors soon noticed her unwavering focus and exceptional marksmanship. What she lacked in brute strength, she made up for with precision, strategic thinking, and an unshakable calm under pressure. Sniper training was an entirely different beast. It required patience beyond measure, a blend of stealth, observational skill, and the ability to execute a single shot that could change the course of a mission. Her instructors quickly recognized her natural talent. Her shots were consistently accurate, her approach meticulous. She didn't just shoot to kill, she shot to protect. Her success in training wasn't just about skill. It was about breaking through a glass ceiling that had loomed over the SEAL community for decades. She became one of the first women to complete the grueling sniper course and earned a place in an elite unit where her gender was irrelevant. Her skill was the only measure. Her teammates, initially wary, soon grew to respect and depend on her. In a unit where trust was paramount, she proved time and again that she could be counted on. The battlefield doesn't care about gender. It demands excellence, and she delivered it in every mission. The media never fully captured her story. Few outside the military knew her name, and she preferred it that way. Fame was a distraction. Her work was silent, invisible, and deadly. But inside the ranks, she became a symbol, a trailblazer, proving that courage and skill weren't limited by tradition or stereotype. Her path wasn't easy. A pressure to be perfect, to never falter, weighed heavily. She carried the hopes of those who doubted women's roles in combat. Every mission was not just about survival, but about paving the way for future generations. Her resilience was forged in countless battles, physical and mental. Off the battlefield, she was quiet and reserved, guarding the emotional scars of war. But in the scope of her rifle, she was a force of nature, calm, composed, and unyielding. The battlefield demanded total focus, and she gave it everything. Her story was more than a tale of a female sniper. It was a story of breaking barriers in a world that demanded conformity, of rewriting what it meant to be a warrior. She wasn't just fighting enemies on the ground. She was fighting centuries of doubt and limitation. Behind every shot she fired was the weight of history and the promise of change. She had earned her place not by fitting in, but by standing out. Her courage opened doors, challenged assumptions, and inspired others to believe that anyone could be a hero. As she prepared for the mission ahead, the battlefield waiting for her silent precision, she carried the strength of every woman who dreamed of breaking free from the shadows. She was a warrior, a pioneer, and above all, a sniper whose story was just beginning. The early morning light cast long shadows over the rocky terrain, painting the rugged landscape with hues of gold and gray. Every creak of a twig, every whisper of the wind, carried the weight of anticipation. The mission was clear, but perilous. Infiltrate deep behind enemy lines, gather critical intelligence, and provide sniper support to the SEAL team engaged in a high-stakes operation. The slightest misstep could mean disaster, not just for her, but for the entire unit. She moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had faced death and refused to blink. Every muscle in her body was trained to perform under pressure. Her footsteps were as light as a whisper. She became one with the terrain, blending seamlessly into the shadows and rocky outcrops that dotted the battlefield. The enemy knew the land well, but they hadn't accounted for the ghosts stalking their ranks. Her role in this mission was vital. As a sniper, she was the eyes and the shield of her team. From her vantage point atop a rocky ledge, she could see the enemy's movements, their patrols, their supply routes, their vulnerabilities. One well-placed bullet could save dozens of lives. One mistake could cost everything. The weight of that responsibility rested squarely on her shoulders, but she bore it with unwavering resolve. The operation had been planned meticulously over weeks. Intelligence reports indicated a surge in enemy activity in this region, suggesting they were preparing for a major offensive. The SEAL team's goal was to disrupt these plans by eliminating key targets and gathering critical intel that could turn the tide of the broader conflict. Communication with her team was limited. Silence was survival. Every radio transmission was carefully timed, brief, and encoded. If intercepted, it would give away their position. The sniper relied on prearranged signals and the keen instincts honed from countless hours in the field. Her ability to read the terrain, anticipate enemy moves, and remain undetected was what made her indispensable. As the hours ticked by, tension grew thicker in the air. Enemy patrols passed below her position, unaware of the lethal presence watching from above. The sniper's fingers hovered over her rifle's trigger, her scope trained on the distant figures moving with purpose and urgency. Her breath remained steady, her mind focused on the mission ahead. She reflected briefly on the path that had brought her here, from the grueling days of training, through countless missions that tested her limits, to this moment, high above a hostile enemy, alone but unyielding. Every hardship had prepared her for this. The cold nights, the grueling exercises, the skepticism she had to overcome. All led to this. Suddenly, movement caught her eye. A convoy of enemy vehicles slowly made its way along a dusty road. It was a critical target carrying officers and supplies vital to the enemy's operations. Taking out the convoy would cripple their capacity to launch attacks and buy precious time for her team. She adjusted her scope, factoring in the wind, distance, and elevation. The sniper's training kicked into overdrive. The slightest miscalculation could betray her position or waste the shot. She waited for the perfect moment, every nerve tuned to precision. With a calm exhale, she squeezed the trigger. The bullet flew silently through the air, striking the lead vehicle's engine. Flames erupted, chaos ignited. Enemy soldiers scattered, scrambling for cover as confusion spread through their ranks. Her team, alerted by the explosion, knew their window to act had opened. But the mission was far from over. As the enemy regrouped, she scanned the battlefield again, tracking the movement of a high-ranking officer, attempting to rally his men. His voice cut through the din, barking orders, trying to restore order. Removing him from the equation would cripple their command. Without hesitation, she realigned her scope and took aim. The shot was quick, efficient, and deadly. The officer collapsed, stunned silence rippling across the enemy lines. Panic set in. Her heartbeat remained steady, her training overriding adrenaline. The battlefield was a deadly chess game, and she was several moves ahead. Meanwhile, her own team pressed forward, using the chaos she created to infiltrate deeper. They moved with precision, clearing enemy positions and securing vital intel. But they depended on her vigilance. One shot could mean the difference between life and death. Despite the danger, she found moments of quiet clarity. The stillness before the storm was a reminder of why she fought not just for victory, but to protect those who trusted her with their lives. Suddenly, a sharp explosion rocked her position. A mortar round landed nearby, sending dust and debris flying. She was thrown off balance, but remained alive, though the enemy now knew she was there. Enemy forces began converging, firing blindly into the smoke and dust, desperate to silence the sniper they believed was a threat. Her heart pounded, but her focus never wavered. She ducked behind a jagged rock, assessing damage and planning her next move. It was a pivotal moment. The enemy thought they had her cornered. Their voices grew louder, filled with hope and arrogance. "She's dead. The sniper is dead," they shouted, believing their cheers signaled the end of the hunt. But in truth, she was more alive than ever. Under the rubble, bruised but unbroken, she steadied her breathing and prepared for what would become one of the most defining moments of her life. The battlefield was far from silent, but her presence was still undetected. Every second became an eternity as she calculated her next move. The enemy's false confidence was her greatest advantage. They had grown reckless, exposed by their own hubris. The mission that had started with precision and patience now turned into a deadly game of survival and strategy. She was no longer just a sniper, she was the last line of defense. Her team's success depended on her ability to outwit and outshoot an enemy that was closing in fast. The rocks and shadows around her became both shield and sanctuary. Her rifle was ready, her mind razor-sharp. The enemy's cheers would soon turn to screams of fear. Her story was not just one of war, but of relentless spirit and the quiet power of a woman who refused to be invisible. In the heart of enemy territory, surrounded and underestimated, the sniper prepared to prove that true strength lies not in numbers or noise, but in skill, courage, and an unyielding will to survive. The dust hung thick in the air, clinging to her skin and clothes like a suffocating shroud. The explosion that had ripped through the rocky ledge moments ago had thrown her off balance, sending her tumbling into a shallow crevice hidden beneath a tangled mass of rubble. For a breathless moment, time seemed to freeze broken, only by the heavy pounding of her heart and the distant chaos of gunfire. She lay still, every instinct screaming at her to move, but her training was relentless. She knew survival required patience, deception. The enemy had seen the explosion and the sudden disappearance of her position. They would assume she had been caught in the blast. If she moved now, she would give herself away. Enemy soldiers surged forward, shouting and firing blindly into the smoke-filled air. They scanned the rocks with frantic urgency, desperate to confirm her death. "She's dead." One yelled, the words carried like a twisted victory cry through the chaos. "The SEAL sniper is finished." The arrogance in their voices stung, but she buried it deep beneath layers of calm. Inside the rubble, her body ached, bruised, scraped, but alive. A shallow wound across her side burned sharply, but adrenaline drowned out the pain. Her mind raced, cataloging the battlefield and planning her next move. For the enemy, it was a moment of celebration. Their shouts echoed through the rocky valley, their confidence swelling like a tide. The sniper was out of the fight. The mission's most dangerous threat had been eliminated, or so they believed. But beneath their cheers was a deadly mistake. Her breath slowed, controlled and deliberate. She adjusted the strap of her rifle, careful not to make a sound. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows that would soon cloak the battlefield in darkness, her ally in the coming hours. She felt the cool touch of the metal rifle against her cheek, a comforting reminder that the weapon she had wielded for years was still at her command. This was more than a gun. It was a lifeline, a tool of justice and survival. She whispered to herself a vow she had carried for years. Survive, fight, protect. The mission was not over. Her team depended on her. Lives depended on her. Every muscle tensed, ready to spring into action. But first, she needed to assess her injuries and the terrain. Slowly, carefully, she shifted her position just enough to peer out from the rubble. The enemy was moving cautiously, their initial confidence wavering as the sounds of gunfire and explosions continued to ripple through the valley. Her scope, still fixed on the landscape, captured every detail, the scattering of enemy patrols, the flicker of lights as they set up defensive positions, the faint glow of communication devices. They had no idea she was alive. Her presence was a ghostly shadow, invisible to their eyes. In the distance, she spotted movement enemy soldiers, carrying wounded comrades, hurrying to regroup. Her fingers tightened on the rifle. This was her moment. The balance of power hung by a thread. As darkness began to cloak the battlefield, she silently repositioned herself, inching along the rocky ledge, never fully exposing her position. Her heart was steady. Her mind was clear. The enemy's false assumption was her greatest advantage. One by one, she began to pick her targets with precision. Her first shot shattered the silence, a ghostly whisper that signaled the beginning of a deadly counterstrike. The enemy fell, confusion turning into panic. The once confident forces scrambled for cover, desperate to find the unseen sniper who had survived their ambush. The cheers of victory dissolved into frantic shouts of fear and disbelief. "She's alive! The sniper's alive!" echoed through the ranks. The tide of battle was shifting. The enemy's mistake had been underestimating her resolve and her skill. She moved with calculated grace, every shot deliberate and deadly. Her mind remained sharp despite the pain and exhaustion. The battlefield became a chessboard, each bullet a strategic move to dismantle the enemy's command and control. Her team, watching from a distance, felt the change. Communications crackled with news of enemy disarray. The sniper who was declared dead had become the guardian angel of their mission. But this was no time for celebration. She knew the enemy would redouble their efforts to hunt her down. They would be relentless, driven by fear and desperation. Her survival depended on staying one step ahead, blending into the shadows, and striking with precision. Every moment was a battle of wills. The enemy hunted a ghost. She hunted survival. Her story was becoming legend and echo whispered across the battlefield. The dead sniper who wasn't dead. The woman whose silence spoke louder than gunfire. As the night deepened, she found a new vantage point higher ground with a clearer view of the enemy's movements. Her injuries throbbed, but the pain was secondary to the mission. She was a soldier, a protector, a force of nature. Her shots continued to find their marks, one by one, unraveling the enemy's strength. Fear took hold of the opposing forces, their morale cracking under the weight of an invisible hunter. The battlefield was hers, though the enemy still fought desperately for survival. The hours blurred into an endless dance of patience, precision, and courage. The sniper was no longer just a figure behind a scope. She was the heart of the mission, the reason her team could advance. By the time dawn approached, the enemy forces were broken and scattered. The echoes of their earlier triumph were replaced by the silence of defeat. She allowed herself a brief moment to breathe, to feel the victory that had been forged through pain, skill, and unyielding spirit. The world had celebrated her death too soon. She was alive. She was fighting. And she would not be silenced. As the first pale rays of dawn pierced through the smoky haze, the battlefield was a stark contrast to the chaos of the night before. The enemy, once brash and loud with their false celebration, now moved with desperate caution. The terror of an unseen sniper who refused to die had shattered their confidence, leaving them scattered and vulnerable. From her concealed position atop a jagged outcrop, the female SEAL sniper surveyed the aftermath. The scent of gunpowder and scorched earth hung heavy in the air. Bodies lay still, some untouched and others caught mid-action, testaments to the silent war waged under cover of darkness. She felt the ache of her wounds, a dull reminder of the explosion that nearly ended her life. But there was no time to dwell on pain. Her team was still out there, navigating the dangerous terrain below, relying on her deadly precision to carve a path through enemy lines. Their mission was far from over. The tide of battle had shifted, yes, but the enemy still held ground, and they were scrambling to regroup and retaliate. She adjusted the strap on her rifle, eyes narrowing as she scanned the horizon. Movement caught her attention. Small groups of enemy fighters cautiously advancing, weapons raised, but eyes darting nervously. They were hunting, desperate to find and eliminate the ghost sniper who had shattered their ranks. Her finger hovered on the trigger, muscles coiled like a spring. Each shot she took was a thread unraveling the enemy's plan, dismantling their ability to mount an effective counterattack. But she knew this was only the beginning. The enemy would not stay broken for long. Suddenly, a crackle came through her earpiece, her team leader's voice, tense but controlled. "Sniper, this is Echo 1. We're moving toward Objective Delta. We need cover fire on the ridge ahead. Hostiles are regrouping and reinforcements are on the way. Be ready." Her heartbeat quickened. The fight was escalating, and every second counted. "Copy that, Echo 1. Covering your advance," she replied, voice low but steady. The ridge was a critical position, a vantage point the enemy intended to use as a staging ground for their counterattack. If her team could seize it first, they could turn the battle decisively in their favor. She shifted her weight, lining up her shot on a cluster of enemy fighters moving cautiously along the ridge's edge. Her scope framed a perfect target, the squad's leader, barking orders and rallying his men. Her breath slowed, muscles tensed, and with a quiet squeeze, the shot rang out. The leader dropped instantly, confusion rippling through the enemy ranks. Without their commander, their coordination faltered. Her team moved forward under cover of the chaos she created. Gunfire echoed through the valley as they engaged the disorganized enemy. The sniper remained vigilant, eyes sweeping the terrain for new threats. Suddenly, movement caught her eye, a group of enemy reinforcements approaching from the west, armed and ready for a full-scale assault. Their faces were grim, determination etched in every line. They had heard the stories, the rumors of the sniper who refused to die, and yet they marched on with grim resolve. The sniper's mind raced. This was a critical moment. If reinforcements reached the ridge, her team would be outnumbered and outgunned. She needed to act decisively. With calculated precision, she picked off the lead vehicle, disabling it and causing a sudden halt. Panic spread as soldiers scrambled out, exposed and vulnerable. One by one, her bullets found their marks, turning the reinforcements' advance into a chaotic retreat. But the enemy wasn't finished. Mortar shells began raining down, sending dirt and rocks flying near her position. The sniper ducked behind a boulder, momentarily shaken but resolute. Her earpiece crackled again. "Sniper, we need extraction coordinates ASAP. Situation's deteriorating fast." The pressure mounted. The enemy was regrouping for a brutal counterstrike, and the team needed a way out. But extraction under fire was a dangerous gamble. Her mind flashed back to every lesson, every drill that taught her to remain calm in chaos. She focused, blocking out pain, fear, and exhaustion. Her scope found a new target, a mortar crew setting up on a ridge overlooking her position. If they fired, her team would suffer heavy losses. With a steady hand, she took the shot. The explosion was swift and devastating. The mortar crew was silenced before they could fire. Her team seized the moment, pressing forward to secure the ridge. The battle was turning, but she knew the enemy would not retreat quietly. As the sun rose higher, the sniper spotted a group of enemy fighters attempting to flank her team's position. With no hesitation, she picked them off one by one. Each shot a precise stroke of survival. Her mind remained razor-sharp, despite the chaos around her. Every bullet was a statement. She was alive, deadly, and in control. Hours stretched on like an eternity. The sniper's world was a blur of motion-calculated movements. Steady breathing, the click of her rifle's safety off and on. The battlefield was her domain, and she ruled it with quiet authority. Then came the moment that would change everything. A sudden explosion rocked the ridge, sending her teammates sprawling. The enemy had launched a surprise assault, and the sniper's team was pinned down, vulnerable. The radio burst with urgent voices, calls for medics, requests for reinforcements, cries for help. She knew she had to act fast. With no regard for her own safety, she moved to a new position, one that offered a clearer shot at the enemy's advancing forces. Her wounds throbbed painfully, but adrenaline and determination fueled her. The enemy closed in, but her rifle barked with deadly precision. Every shot she fired bought her team precious seconds to regroup and recover. Her presence was the thin line between victory and defeat. As the battle raged, she felt the weight of every life on the line, the lives of her brothers and sisters in arms who trusted her with their survival. Her story was no longer just about breaking barriers or surviving impossible odds. It was about courage in the face of overwhelming darkness, about the power of one person to change the course of history. When the dust finally settled, the enemy was in full retreat. Her team was battered but victorious, owed in no small part to the sniper who refused to die. But the fight was far from over. The mission's true challenges lay ahead, in the shadows and in the hearts of those who fought. And she would face them all with unwavering strength, unyielding resolve, and the silent power of a sniper who had survived the impossible. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the battered battlefield as the dust began to settle. The enemy's retreat echoed through the valleys, their forces broken and scattered, but the victory had come at a cost. Around her, the remnants of the SEAL team were tending to the wounded, their faces etched with exhaustion and relief. The sniper, despite her own injuries, kept watch, her eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of renewed threat. She was no stranger to sacrifice. Every mission demanded it, but the physical and emotional toll weighed heavier than ever now. The explosion that nearly claimed her life had left a deep wound, and every step she took reminded her that she was not invincible. Yet, giving up was never an option. Her teammates gathered around, some limping, others with fresh bandages, all sharing silent glances of gratitude and respect. To them, she was more than just a sniper. She was a symbol of resilience and hope in the darkest of moments. They had cheered her death too soon, but now their trust in her was absolute. The radio crackled to life, breaking the fragile calm. Command to Echo Team. Status update. Report casualties and mission progress. Her team leader responded with a terse summary, but she knew the reality was far more complex than words could capture. The mission had succeeded in disrupting the enemy's plans, but the scars left behind were deep and lasting. As the team prepared to move to extraction, she took a moment alone, leaning against a battered rock and closing her eyes. Memories flooded back of training sessions, pushing her beyond limits. The skepticism she had faced as a woman in the SEALs. The countless nights spent waiting in silence for a shot that could change everything. She thought of her family, of the small town she had left behind with dreams bigger than the horizon. They didn't fully understand what she did, but she carried their hopes with her, a silent promise to return stronger. Pain radiated from her side, a reminder that survival was not without consequence. Yet her mind was clear. This mission was more than a battle. It was a statement. She had proven that skill, courage, and determination transcended gender, expectation, and doubt. But the battlefield was unforgiving, and the wounds both seen and unseen were reminders of the price she paid. As the team moved toward the extraction point, the sniper remained vigilant. Every shadow, every sound could signal danger. The enemy was unpredictable, and retaliation was never far behind. The helicopter's rotors sliced through the air, a beacon of hope and escape. As it touched down, the sniper helped her wounded comrades. The camaraderie between them, a testament to the unbreakable bond forged in fire. Once aboard, she allowed herself a brief moment of respite, her body aching but her spirit unbowed. The flight back to base was silent, filled with the quiet hum of machines and the unspoken weight of what they had endured. Back at the base, medics tended to her injuries, their professionalism a comfort amid the pain. Yet, as they worked, she found her thoughts drifting to the future of missions yet to come, battles yet to be fought, and the legacy she hoped to leave. Her presence in the SEALs had already challenged norms, broken barriers, and inspired change. But the journey was ongoing, and the battlefield awaited. That night, in the quiet solitude of her quarters, she reflected on the mission's cost. The lives lost, the sacrifices made, and the price of survival weighed heavily on her conscience. She reached for a photo tucked away in her pack, a simple image of her family, a reminder of why she fought. The war was far from over, but she was ready to face whatever came next. Her story was one of courage, resilience, and the unyielding spirit of a sniper who had survived when the world thought she was dead. And she was just getting started. The weeks following the mission felt like a whirlwind. The base was alive with activity, a mix of celebrations for their success and somber moments honoring the fallen. The sniper found herself caught between these extremes, haunted by memories of battle, yet buoyed by the respect she had earned from her team and command. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing, one she could neither ignore nor escape. Her survival had turned her into a legend, one whispered about in mess halls, discussed in briefings, and hailed in official reports. Yet not everyone welcomed her victory with open arms. The military, like any institution, had its entrenched biases, and her presence as a female sniper in one of the most elite combat units challenged long-standing traditions. Questions and skepticism shadowed her every step. Some doubted her capabilities, attributing her success to luck or support rather than skill. Others whispered about the miracle of her survival, unable to reconcile her defiance of expectations with their rigid views of combat and gender roles. She had fought not only for survival on the battlefield, but also for recognition and respect within the ranks. The weight of these battles pressed on her, heavier than any physical wound. One afternoon, as she prepared her gear for the next training exercise, a senior officer approached, his expression unreadable. "We've reviewed the after-action reports," he began cautiously. "Your performance was exceptional, but there are concerns about the risks you took." She met his gaze steadily, refusing to back down. "Every mission carries risks. I took calculated ones to protect my team and complete our objectives." He nodded slowly, though the doubt lingered in his eyes. "We expect discipline and adherence to protocol. Deviations can't be overlooked." Her jaw tightened. She knew the unspoken truth. Her success challenged the status quo, and some were uncomfortable with that disruption. Later that day, as she trained with her team, the tension was palpable. Her teammates stood by her side, their support unwavering, but the atmosphere was thick with unspoken questions and subtle challenges. The sniper drew strength from their loyalty. They saw her for what she was: a skilled warrior, a leader, and an inspiration. Yet the shadows of doubt gnawed at her resolve. She wondered if the real battle was not just against enemy forces, but against the invisible barriers within her own ranks. Despite the challenges, she refused to be silenced. Her determination burned brighter, fueled by the knowledge that every step forward paved the way for those who would follow. One evening, in the quiet of her quarters, she penned a letter to her family. Words poured out of struggle, triumph, and the unbreakable will to fight for what was right. The letter was a reminder of her roots and the dreams that had carried her this far. As the days passed, she continued to train harder, push further, and prove that her place in the SEALs was earned, not given. Her story was becoming more than a tale of survival. It was a testament to defiance, perseverance, and the courage to stand firm in the face of doubt. The battlefield outside might have been won, but the fight within was ongoing, and she was ready to meet it head-on. The war zone had moved thousands of miles away, but the echoes of battle still resonated in her mind. The sniper sat quietly in the dimly lit room of a military conference center, the glow of a projector illuminating a sea of faces. Around her were commanders, strategists, and young recruits, the next generation of warriors. Her story was being told, not just as a tale of survival, but as a beacon of possibility. SEAL snipers dead. They cheered until her shots found them one by one. The headline had screamed in newspapers and military reports alike. The legend had grown far beyond the rocky ridge where she had once crouched, wounded but unyielding. Her presence in the room was a living testament to the power of perseverance. She had come a long way from the battlefield, from the whispered doubts of her early days in the SEALs, and from the fiery crucible of combat that had nearly claimed her life. As she stood to speak, the room fell silent. Her voice, steady and clear, carried not just the story of the mission, but the heart behind it. "I wasn't just fighting for myself," she began, eyes scanning the room, meeting the gaze of every listener. "I was fighting for my team, for every soldier who depends on each other to come home. I was fighting to prove that strength isn't defined by gender, but by courage, skill, and commitment." The audience was rapt, hanging on every word. She recounted the night when the enemy thought she was dead, the explosion that threw her into a crevice, and the moments she chose to remain silent and invisible. She spoke of the shots fired through the night, the targets taken one by one, and the surge of hope that returned to her team because of her unyielding spirit. But she didn't shy away from the cost, the pain, the loss, and the long road of recovery. "Survival is not just physical," she said. "It's mental, emotional, and sometimes the hardest battles are fought within." Her words were more than a speech. They were a call to action. She challenged those young warriors to push beyond boundaries, to question limits, and to support one another regardless of difference. After the talk, as she stepped down from the podium, she was surrounded by young recruits, many of whom approached her with questions, admiration, and hope. Among them were young women who saw in her the possibility of a future once thought impossible. Her legacy was no longer just the mission on that ridge or the shots. Fired in the dark, it was the inspiration she sparked in others. Back at the base, she resumed training, pushing herself and others to new heights. Her injuries were scars she wore with quiet pride, reminders of battles fought and won. She took on mentorship roles, guiding newcomers through the rigors of combat and the complexities of military life. Her leadership style was grounded in empathy and experience. She understood the weight of doubt, and the power of resilience. Every lesson she shared was a step toward breaking down barriers and building stronger teams. The military began to take notice, not just of her skills, but of the cultural shift she represented. Slowly, policies evolved, and more doors opened for women in combat roles. Her story was a catalyst for change, a testament to what could be achieved when determination met opportunity. Yet she remained grounded. The battlefield had taught her humility and respect for every life. She never forgot the teammates lost or the families waiting anxiously for their safe return. Her story was a mosaic of sacrifice, triumph, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Years later, long after the dust had settled on that fateful mission, she would look back and see not just the enemy defeated or the battles won, but the lives touched and the futures changed. She had become more than a sniper. She was a symbol of hope, courage, and the unbreakable spirit of a warrior who refused to be silenced. And though the world had once cheered her death, it was her living legacy, the shots that found their marks, one by one, that would echo through history.